This is Fulbright Women Podcast Season 2. We're excited to bring to you 20 new brilliant women who are pushing the boundaries in their fields and lives and serving as inspirations to so many around them. Joining us today is Afreina Noor. Afreina is a Fulbright scholar with a Master of Public Administration from UPenn. She has 15 years of diversified experience across the nonprofit, corporate, and electronic news sectors. She is also an entrepreneur. And today, we're talking about all of that and how she turned her life around during the pandemic when she moved to a new country. Hello.
Afreina, how are you?
I'm good, Afreina. How are you?
I am good. It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well. Afreina, why did you choose to get your master's in public administration?
So for me, I was working in the nonprofit sector in Pakistan, and I started, or rather co-founded, this nonprofit network all over Pakistan. It's called the Free and Fair Election Network, still there, surviving. So I was just working on democracy and democratic governance. And it just made sense. Like the next master's I would do would be either public policy or public administration. And at the time, it just wasn't offered anywhere in Pakistan. So it made sense for me to apply for the Fulbright and to go in this path. It was just a natural progression. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary for somebody who was working in the field I was working in.
So what I understand is, your life was sorted. You were going in the right direction that life had found for you, right? That you just thought, okay, the next natural step is to go for public administration. You got that. When you graduated, what was the plan?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So for me, the plan was that I'm going to go back to Pakistan and keep working pretty much in the nonprofit sector and doing whatever I had been doing, but maybe like at an elevated, coming from a much more elevated pitch, seeing things in a different way. But then when I went to Penn, I realized the entire map that I had drawn kind of it was tossed to the side. And truly a testament to like broadening your horizons kind of a situation. And I was like, okay, well, I think I want to work with the corporate sector. And that was a complete switch because I had never worked with the corporate sector. I had never thought I would work or want to work. And going to Penn was great in that way because I had a lot of instructors and a lot of people who were not limiting themselves, even with public administration, they weren't limiting themselves to governance. It was just much more than that. And it's great that I was able to see that.
Why did that switch happen? Give me the details there. Why did that switch happen?
So that switch happened. I feel like there were a few course instructors and we saw that I just started to realize that not all of them were working at Capitol Hill. Not all of them were, working at some level of governance or as state representatives or so on. Of course, there were a few of those as well, and there were politicians as well, but a good bunch of them were lobbyists, negotiators. They were working because they were using the knowledge that they understood of governance and then taking that to a completely different sector and then adding value to that sector because of that knowledge and that language, which is not jargon. It is truly a different language that's being spoken. And I was like, to me, that was quite eye-opening because it really showed me that there is more than one way of doing things, And I was like, okay, well, let's give this a shot. I've never tried this. I didn't think of it, but it really appealed to me.
So what I'm hearing is that at UPenn, you were exposed to new applications of your training. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, new ways to apply the same training, but many different angles or facets to be able to apply it. So it's not just stuck. You're not just stuck in in government. It's not about being stuck, but that's not the only avenue that's open to you. I guess that's a better way to put it.
Perfect. So then if you're looking at the timeline, you were into governance, right? And then you applied for UPenn, the horizons opened for you. You understood, oh, there's more that I can do with the same kind of training or, getting more training into it. So now corporate world is open for you. You graduate. How do you materialize, this switch that had turned on?
Yeah, so what's very interesting is that we had this re-entry seminar for the first time in my Fulbright batch. And so it was to help combat reverse culture shock. And,
Cultural shock.
so in that we wrote a letter to ourselves that after a year, I want to be here. And you had like other Fulbrighters writing little notes to you as well. And in the same letter, you posted them to yourself, rather they did it for you. And one of the goals I had in that was to work in the corporate environment, but not in corporate social responsibility. So, because that's the one loop, like that's the one place with anybody with my kind of background would automatically find themselves in. And I did not want to stretch myself just to doing something from like switching a hat. I wanted to completely switch my perspective. So I wanted the corporate experience. So I wrote that. And when I got the letter, I had been working for a year at Telenor, Pakistan, and I was working in the corporate affairs at the unit at that time. So it was really good that I was working in public and government affairs. And I feel like I was able to put use to pretty much a lot of my training into that department, because there was stuff that was, I was able to accomplish in a way that many people were just doubtful that a woman in this role, because it's not a woman's role at all at any telco. It was never a woman's role. So when I went in, they were already dubious. And then, I brought in this training, and I think it really helped me accomplish a lot of things.
So when you graduated, you went to Telenor, back to Telenor?
It's the first time. I've never worked in Telenor before. Yes.
Okay, so
I joined Telenor. Yeah.
And then from Telenor, what happened there?
So it was really interesting. So the first year I worked at the corporate Cora, I forget the real name really. This is so long ago. So I worked in corporate affairs, public and government affairs for the first year. And then the second year, because I was also writing a lot of policy papers, which had not been done previously, that was pretty good because I was writing them directly for the CEO, and he noticed this work that I was doing. So the next year, there was a very small team of handpicked people, 3 people to work directly with the CEO. And I was the only woman to make it to that team. And I was picked simply because I did not have an engineering or IT background, and I was looking at things from a completely different angle. And it was great that within a year, that was actually like seen, encouraged, heard, and I was able to work on digital change and innovation for the next year.
So it was all going good for you, right?
It was good, but I was really out of my comfort zone. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So then if it was all good, you were being also valued for, choosing to get out of your comfort zone and providing, a very different perspective to your CEO. All cool. And then fast forward to 2018, you decide to move to a completely different country. Why did you make that decision?
Yeah. So I made that decision because I met my husband, and my husband was living here. So I made that decision for us. And I think Canada was on the list of countries where I would like to live, but I had always thought to myself, no, Montreal, no, it's just too cold. I don't think I'll ever live there. I'll pick like Vancouver or like something else, which is the least cold place. But there you go. I didn't choose the place. I guess the place chose me.
The place chose you.
Yeah.
And then what was the experience like?
Oh, I think so. I came here like relatively towards the end of 2018, and I did not realize how French Quebec really is until I arrived here and until I lived here. So there's a very clear divide between French and English, and it's the only French speaking part of Canada, but you can get along speaking English, like you can find your way, but you're not going to find a job. You're not going to find, you're not going to have prospects. You're not going to, and you can't even land, suppose like a sales or a retail position, because again, you have to be bilingual. Everything you're going to look at, you're absolutely necessarily have to be bilingual. So I was like, okay, well, first step is let's learn French. And then I just started to learn French. But even while I was learning French, I was still lost because I didn't know anybody and I didn't have a network. I wasn't working, I wasn't studying. There was just no way to meet people. And it was just quite difficult to actually find that that inroad, that how do I actually assimilate in this part of the world.
For someone who was so accomplished, right, and was being valued for what she had to offer, um, to come to a place which is so foreign and also not so receptive, to welcoming, what kind of toll does it take a toll? And if it does, what kind of a toll does it take on a person like
Oh,
that?
yes, it takes a toll. Definitely takes a toll. A few things take a toll. So one, I arrived here late of 2018, so the winter was starting, and it's a long, harsh winter. I mean, and it's beautiful. Don't take me wrong. The snow is gorgeous, but at the same time, if you have nobody to meet, you're not going to step out unnecessarily in the cold. Maybe to take a stroll, but nothing other than that. And then obviously the days are shorter. So so that part already in itself is something to consider. Then it was also a real blow because I thought when I had gone to Penn, I was like, okay, I've been to an Ivy League school. I'm a Fulbright scholar. I've equipped myself. Nobody will ever question me on these credentials. Like, this is, the one world passport kind of a situation. And somebody said to me, a recruiter actually said to me, oh, you need to get your degree, like the verification done to actually find out if it actually qualifies as even a master's over here.
A UPenn degree.
Yeah. And I just looked at this person, really flabbergasted, super pissed. And I was like, I think you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And I just left. I was like, I don't even want to do this. Like, I'm not even getting into this. I don't need equivalence. There's no way
Yes.
anything, and it was just surprising. And I had to say, would you ask somebody from McGill to have their degree? Would you want them to have an equivalence? And they were like, no. And I was like, this is better than that. So, I mean, they do say that McGill is Canada's Harvard. So I'm just like, maybe not better, but get a perspective. This is somewhere in that league, basically. So it's very disappointing to hear things like that. People are just like, oh, all the work you've ever done, even if you worked in America and other countries, doesn't matter. You just don't have any Canadian work experience. And you just say, yes, but so there's just two ways to go about that. Either you say to yourself, okay, everything I've done up until this point adds up to nothing, and I'm just going to start from scratch. Or you say, no, I refuse to believe that or accept that. Everything I have done has value, whether there are people who can see it or not. I know that there is value, but it takes a really long time to even come to those crossroads and say that it's this or this. Before you get there, you're pretty much, your self-esteem is destroyed. The weather is depressing. Your time zone for all of your support network back home is just like more than 10 hours apart. You really have to, you kind of feel like you're inconveniencing people, even if they're friends and you want to talk to them. And also nobody else is going through what you're going through. So it's just not many people will understand exactly your situation because it is a unique situation and it's only your situation. So unless somebody else has walked in those shoes, it's not going to really help you.
Yeah, you said not a lot of people would understand your situation, but what, like you're describing it, when we are going through the situation, it takes us that kind of time as well before we begin to understand what's really happening, right?
That's
And
a
how
great
to
point.
cope with it.
Yeah.
And that is the real struggle, right? Because that is the point where you start questioning yourself, all your accomplishments, all the success that you've gotten. Your degree is, like UPenn, for God's sake, if we're talking UPenn here. So when that time hit you, how did you, kind of brought all your pieces together to, remind yourself, no, you're still valuable and worth it, and let's just find a way through it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like the imposter syndrome was like, it was completely taking over me at this point. It was just like, okay, yeah, no, this is just not going to happen. Like, maybe everything up until this point in my life was luck and I didn't have anything to do with it. And, and it was just really scary to think that. And then I think I was talking to my mom one day and she reminded me, she's like, do you remember how hard you worked for the Fulbright application. And I was like, oh, yeah, actually, I do remember it, because that is not an easy application by any stretch. Like, the amount of like preparation, the references, and your statements, and your essays. And so she reminded me, she's like, I would be up for Fajr in the morning, and I would come and I'd see your light on, and you had been up all night, and you would go to sleep for like an hour or two and then head out to work and then come back. And then you were just like running after people for your references, for your ATC attestation. You were just doing this. And, my mom would joke around. She'd be like, if I was in your place, I'd just give up. This is just too much. And I was just like, no, but it's a small price to pay for what comes next. And it's super motivating to do that. So she reminded me that there is a lot of like tenacity that you have in you, and you've achieved things, that those are your accomplishments. It's not somebody else didn't, like, it's not some stroke of luck that you ended up where you did, and all the things that you did do. Even in Pakistan, there's a lot of stuff that I did. And then there was a career change program, which UPenn was doing for alumni, and I signed up for that. And they had a really good exercise on that. So they asked you to reach out to people who know you from different aspects of work or life, and then you ask them, and they answer some questions, and then it comes in anonymously, and then you get to keep that feedback with you. And that was amazing, because there were people who I never thought would even fill it out, but they went ahead and filled it and told me so many things that were good and positive about me, that it just really reminded me of the things I had done and the qualities I did have. And it also helped me like kind of like stretch it to say that, okay, this is where I want to go. Because once I came here, I'd be like, okay, maybe what I've done is not going to work here. So maybe I shouldn't apply for this. Maybe I shouldn't apply for that. And so it was also part of it was like kind of reinventing yourself at the worst time you should be. But because all these doubts start to come in and there's really no opportunity knocking, I think you just become a puddle of all the messes you've ever been.
That's right. That's right. No, this is very interesting what you're talking about, because it is so imperative to have that kind of confidence in oneself. But having said that, external validation is also important sometimes to just remind ourselves who we are. And it's brilliant that, your mom got to remind you that Fulbright is not just a test of, your academia, right? It's not just a test for what career you're going to pick. I think, and your mom pointed out it really well, that it is really a test of character, right? Test of tenacity, persistence. How well can you hustle? How smart are you to kind of adapt to situations and kind of turn them into something that is valuable, not just for yourself, but for people around you? And I think that's what you did. I loved your story, and I'm not just saying it because I'm talking to you. I really loved your story because it's so vulnerable, and yet, it's a testament that how you can turn something so vulnerable into so powerful, so that you can turn your life around. And this is we're talking about when you were lonely in a different country during a pandemic, right? Yeah. And you didn't just turn your life around for yourself. You made sure you are of value to people around you. So would you like to talk about some of the projects that you just, started and, started working with others, for yourself, for everyone around you?
Yeah, for sure. So what happened is that once I was here and I started to look for resources, I was like, okay, I can't be the first woman immigrant who speaks English and is going through this. There have to be other places. So I did find places, I did find resources, but none of them really spoke to me. So there was like, okay, this is how you can find a job. And then it was, and within a job, it was like, you can find a job at a call center, not to take anything away from that, but that's not what I can do. Like I want to do something more than that. Or it would be like, or B-level jobs kind of a situation. And it was just like, here's a roadmap, here's how you'll find a job. But that's not the end goal in this situation. There's just so much more that you're going through when they do say that immigration is one of the most difficult, changes one can put oneself into, right? Because it's just loss of everything. So when they weren't speaking to me, I thought, okay, you know what? I am going to start to have conversations with other women who are like me. And so I started not a show, well, kind of, yeah, a virtual show in which somebody just like you, in which I would be you, and I would have a guest, and we would talk about how it is to immigrate to Montreal, how the experience has been. And I started to do this like a live Zoom session, and would have people who would join in and they could ask questions. And then it just started to take off because the guests were feeling like, the women who were coming on here were feeling a good dose of self-confidence because they had done so much in their home countries, and over here all of a sudden nobody knew who you were, nobody cared, nobody wanted to know your experience. I mean, what do we do with your experience? Where's the value in that, you know? So it was really good to have that. And then the feedback was really good because there were more and more women coming in saying, that really spoke to me. Can you get somebody else? Can you get somebody else? And then I would ask them if they themselves wanted to just come on the show. And so I started to do this series, and it was called Conversations with Women Immigrants in Montreal, like a very generic name so that anybody could find it from anywhere kind of a situation. And I really targeted like women of all color, of all nationalities, as many people as I could get. I talk in the past tense because at the moment this is paused, but it will resume sometime this year once I get a grip of like everything else that's going on around me.
So, in these conversations with everyone, and even, when you'd sit with yourself, did you ever find yourself thinking about this whole, how everyone says in your career, consistency is key? And
Right.
when we move away to a completely different world, trying to build something from scratch, our minds, I think, sometimes start to question, how do we stay consistent to what we have been doing? What is the next building block? Or do we need to pivot? Because sometimes pivoting would help us find a new dimension. Did you ever find yourself in the middle of that kind of conversation?
Yeah, that is, I feel like that's absolutely the crossroads as well. Like, do I keep building on what I've already built, or do I completely, scratch it out and say, okay, this is it, I'm going to just be reinventing myself completely and start from zero? So I do feel like for me, I did do a bit of both in this situation. So one thing was that I was like, okay, if nobody wants to hire me simply because they see a non-French name and they just remove my application because that's how it works, then fine, sure. You don't want to hire me, I will go and hire myself. And so I was like, I will start my own consulting. I will do what I am doing. Have known to do best. And so I started to try to do a couple of different kinds of consulting. And at the same time, I was starting this show and reaching out to other women and getting to know them. So what happened in the process is that I got to know a lot of other women entrepreneurs because that circle was much more open and welcoming. And it was not a club of, corporate companies, which doesn't let you in because everybody wants to get a job over there. So in this situation, it was more like people who hustle. So the consistency in this situation was that you keep going, no matter what you're doing, no matter what direction you're going in, but you just keep going. So it was like, you just don't let go of your hands and feet and float wherever the river takes you. You keep, हाथ पाँव मारते रहते हैं आप अपने.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're just
yeah.
like,
Reclaim your agency, right? That's what it
exactly,
is about. So what's
exactly.
happening? What's happening right now? What are you up to right now?
Well, right now I am, thank God, after more than like almost 4 years at this point, I am in a good place. I have a full-time job at the Quebec Writers Federation in communications and digital media, which is stuff that I've always done. But again, this is a very small little like crack that you can find this spot in very few English nonprofits which cater to English people. And that's what we do over here. We cater to English writers in the community. So I do that. And then I do have my consulting. And that is why the conversations with women in immigrants in Montreal is paused, because I needed to take a break and see, like, kind of like audit my time and see where I can go. But it's going to start again soon because I am very, very passionate about that.
So we do see you've come such a long way in these 4 years from the time when You didn't know who was going to, accept you, for the lack
Yeah.
of a better expression, to the time when you had to pause certain projects because you have to budget your time, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when you look at it like that, you realize, oh, I have come a long way, because you don't you don't reflect on that every day, and it's true. So I think the bottom line is that time always marches on. It always moves forward, and it's. I think what always helped me not lose sight of the shore was that the same thing, that this is not going to stay the same this the entire time. So I just need to keep whatever I do, I keep doing. And I think that if anybody would usually ask me, like, what is somebody supposed to do in that position, my answer is do everything, because you're like saying, oh, should I do this or that or that? And what happens is you end up doing nothing. So instead of doing nothing, just do everything, and whatever is meant to be or you're interested in or is supposed to be is just going to pull you towards it even more. And so the trick is, don't stand still.
Yeah, and self-doubt, stay away from that because it's
Oh yeah,
destructive, cruel, and consuming, right? So, most importantly, that's really important.
for
It was
sure.
so much fun to, speak with you today, Afrina.
Yeah.
And I have to say this. I think I already said it to you via our email correspondence as well. I'm so proud of your story, because it is such a testament to, your strength, and persistence and tenacity, like we have said over and over again. And thank you so much. And I wish you all the best with your future projects. And I hope we stay in touch.
Wonderful, for sure. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for all the the pats on the back. They feel
Of course.
good.
Of course. You have a good day ahead.
You
Bye
too. Thank
bye.
you. Bye.